we are recording whenever you are want to be.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the special meeting of the Hampstead School Board on Tuesday, October 6th. Before we begin, I will read our COVID statement. As chair of the Hampstead School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen to this meeting by dialing the following phone number, 888-475-4499 or 877-853-5257. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom telephonetically. Instructions have also been provided on the district website at hampsteadschools.net. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please email hmstechnology@hampsteadschools.net. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Melissa, will you please start the meeting with a roll call attendance?
Yes. Megan Malcolm?
Present. I'm alone in this room as well as the house.
Caitlin Parnell?
Here, I am alone in the room. There are other members of the family in the house.
David Smith?
I'm present, alone in this room, and others are in the home.
Jim Sweeney?
Here, alone in this room, other members in the house. Thank you.
Thank you. And Karen Yasenka, I believe, is absent. Marker is absent. And executive consultant, Dr. Earl Metzler.
I'm here in my home office alone, and there are other members of my family in the house.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Well, we have a relatively streamlined agenda tonight. Up first, we will be getting a presentation from Dr. Metzler and Mr. Flynn regarding our safe learning plan.
Excellent. Mike, did you want me to?
Yeah, sorry, you go ahead. I was getting ready to pull up the document. Go ahead.
So thank you for first, obviously for the community, and we have quite a few members obviously attending the meeting, which we appreciate. We're very thankful for your patience. We've taken a lot of time to put together what we think is in Hampstead's best interest in looking at phase 2 and phase 3. So we have an opportunity to go through. I do caution, there's a lot of details that will be in building level meetings, like if they're individual. For instance, I'll give you an example, just to kind of put it in the proper framework, is an individual maybe that didn't have any windows in their classroom, maybe asking for some sort of special consideration about something that they normally wouldn't do, like leave a door open, which would be a security issue. Those kinds of things will get worked out at the building level, those really specific individual things. This is a broad plan to get to our ultimate goal, which was to get everybody that chooses to be back in person as soon as possible. Also to allow for choice for our families that for whatever reason need to select the remote version. While we're doing that, we're simultaneously doing the same for staff. And so, we haven't put any hard stakes in the ground yet, but we have some numbers that we've been able to get through surveys to figure out where we think we are. And then I think once we commit to a direction, we'll know exactly where we are in terms of capacity. So there are a lot of really detailed orienting questions like, is my child going to have the same teacher? And there's some things we just can't answer until we actually know exactly how many staff are going to be in the buildings in person, how many are going to be handling the remote learning, and hopefully mirroring the same selections that families make in terms of remote versus. But again, this is our safe learning plan. And so for everyone, we're trying to get back in person as quickly and as safely as possible. And so we're trying to make sure that we take care of all that. So this plan, Mr. Flynn, when you're ready, Mike, why don't we start and take a look at kind of where we were, where we are, and where we're going. All right.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. I think it's important. One of the things that we've been saying to the board is, and what the board's been asking us is communicating with families. And what we wanted to do is just take a brief moment and share the results of the survey that went out on the 21st. It was open from the 21st to the 23rd. There had been a total of, 8 or 9 days of virtual learning at the time. And we just wanted to share some of those results, and I'll speak really quickly as we move forward. But as you can see, we were very excited that we had nearly 600 responses. It was one of our most active surveys that we had participation in. And that happened within a 48-hour period. So we appreciate the community members, the parents certainly taking that survey so that we could gather some more information, and I'll discuss what we did after that. So I'm not going to read each question, but as you can see, first one is overall experience, and you can see where the numbers were located at the time. I think it's important to note after 8 days, as we scroll down here, please rate your overall experience with communication. These are some things that we can be proud of as a district from an internal standpoint. And that's really what we were trying to gauge after a short period of time of virtual learning, making sure that we were communicating with families, making sure that families felt as though their students were engaged. That was a very proud result for us of 48 and 33% of satisfied or very satisfied with engagement. And then as we move down, one of the things as we were planning, coming from the spring to the fall, and we discussed crisis learning versus virtual learning, is making sure that the assignments were appropriate in nature. And I'll explain rigor in a second. Following up with the overall, has it been clearly explained? That was the other emphasis was us. We wanted to make sure that students were spending more time doing the work rather than explaining how to do the work. So with those quick survey questions, we were able to determine our next steps. More specifically, if you remember, there were open-ended ones. So to gather 558 responses, it was pretty important. We dropped them into some buckets. And obviously it's helped drive some of our last 2 weeks worth of work, whether it be increased rigor, more office hours, smaller groups, things of that nature, in which parents said areas that we could improve, things that we were doing well. It certainly drives some of our instruction. This week, actually, we met with the admin team yesterday. The principals have created a survey for students now that we're about 4 weeks into this. Middle school students will be taking it at some point this week. And central school students, we're really trying to target some of the younger students. It's not quite as easy to just send out a Google survey and have them read and respond. So it might be a little more teacher-driven type of data points, but we're definitely trying to gauge all the stakeholders involved with this.
Yeah. So Mike, if I could, just on rigor, so we were getting feedback, either the work that was being assigned was too difficult or not difficult enough. And obviously we throw around this word called rigor, for many of us, we hear the word rigor and we think, okay, obviously the work needs to be harder or more challenging. And that is kind of true, but not essentially what rigor really is in terms of when we think about it from an educational perspective, in terms of what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the work, we're trying to challenge students so that they think in new and interesting ways. And so the rigor, it's very individualized and it's very specific to the student. So I think for many of us, I think, that just making it harder, that's really not what we're asking staff to do, just trying to challenge students to make it new and interesting. And I think, I commend the staff in both buildings. This has been very challenging for them, and they've done an outstanding job trying to reach all students. I've been able to sit in on a few more than a few of these Zoom classes, and just blown away with the interactions. And it's not ideal because it's virtual, but it was pretty powerful. And I think I said this last time, I commend many of our parents. You have some pretty elaborate learning spaces that you've created at home. Very impressive. So I commend you for that. You've done a really good job getting us through this first part, but we're excited now to talk a little bit about how we get phase 2 and into phase 3, again, as safely and quickly as possible, which has always been our goal. Okay, Mike?
Great. So to begin this plan, we just wanted to really bring back where we started. If you can imagine, we've said it several times, how many things can change month to month with the life we're living currently. And in our initial presentation to the board, these were the 3 phases in which we discussed the options that would occur during those times. And even with this chart, when we made it in August, there's already been some changes essentially to what we're going to propose to you this evening. But that was the general. We just wanted to make sure that we kept recalling the initial task force work when we were starting to begin, when we began working on phase 2 and phase 3. Can I just get a thumbs up? I'm a little nervous. You guys can see this, right? I can't. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So phase 2, what we described in August is a hybrid. After some evaluation and discussions with not just the staff, but some of the parents that we've connected with, it's the same model, but it's going to look a little bit different if that's the path we choose. So 2 days will consist of in school, 2 days will be remote, and then 1 day will be virtual. Examples of the cohorts would be, if you are in cohort A, 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, followed by 2 days of remote, Wednesday, Thursday, then Friday would be altogether virtual. And obviously cohort B would be opposite. And then what we've determined is cohort C, if a family chose to stay purely virtual, they would essentially be in their own group. Now, there's a sample schedule a little bit further down, but the reason we determined the 2 on, then the following cohort on Wednesday, Thursday, followed by a virtual day on Friday, is it allowed that opportunity to bring all the students back together to either wrap up what was going on during the week, get something done as a group, as a whole done during the week. So that's why you saw a little bit of the shift. I think initially in August, we discussed Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, then Thursday, Friday. So not off, but a virtual day. So that was really determining of how we've been delivering instruction virtually. And we thought there'd be a valuable experience to end the week together. Your in-school day is going to be pretty standard. Arrival, dismissal, obviously is going to be based on the transportation and who's choosing busing versus car pickup. We're going to focus on core instruction while in school, interventions, and we put unified arts because really, as Dr. Metzler mentioned, a lot of the numbers are going to drive the scheduling. So in a hybrid model, you may see some classes that are virtual and not in the brick and mortar. And then you might see, again, scheduling is going to be driven on numbers. I guess that's the easiest. That's going to be the trend you see throughout this tonight. So on the remote days, it's going to be a little bit different. It'll be what you saw in the spring. More of the, if I see you on Monday, Tuesday, we're going to work through whatever we're going to work through. And then Thursday, Friday is going to be accessing the things on Google Classroom, continuing the work and what you saw, and then bringing it back together on Friday. If you are choosing the fully virtual model and not doing either of the hybrid, you're going to see a little bit of both. And again, this is all based on numbers and staffing and students. So you're going to see a different type of direct instruction virtually. You're going to see some scheduling changes, and it's going to kind of encompass all of the things that we just spoke about. So those are a little bit of what you'll see in hybrid. Okay, as we scroll down here, we mentioned to you, I believe it was 2 weeks ago now, about state testing. And what's interesting is in the spring, the state had said that we were going to be allowed to do our own internal assessments, whether it be iReady or whatever we felt was appropriate. And then at our state level meeting last month, they notified us that we're going to be doing this interim assessment. And at that meeting, they determined, they said that it was going to be about 30 minutes per assessment, ELA and math. And then as we went through these work sessions and these state testing meetings, it seems like the majority of the time it's taking students anywhere between 45 minutes to almost an hour and 15. So the initial plan, you saw a little bit of a shorter window that we had discussed a couple weeks ago. After the planning and preparation was put into place, we felt as though it was better to give ourselves a larger window to make sure that we are accomplishing the tests at that time. So that's where
Mike,
you see that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could jump in. So I think, one of the questions right away, you're like, oh, state testing. Okay, so now we're asking, we're trying to make this as part of a phase 2 to get us to phase 3. So we're trying to bring students back in the middle of phase 2, and then there's state testing. So for some parents that are going, I just don't want to make this confusing for anyone. You can opt out of state testing. That doesn't mean you're opting out of phase 2, right? So the process for that would be no different than it's been in years past. You just contact the building principal and work on the testing piece. But be clear that even though you're opting out of the testing, you may want to be a part of phase 2 in person. And if it falls on some of these days, we just need to make sure that that's clear, right? So you follow that, Mike?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So same protocol. Yep. And as you're going to see some communication come out from the building principals here tomorrow in regards to all of those steps. In regards to the scheduling, we're going to be running buses on those days. So transportation will be available for students to take. It'll be your normal route. As you see, only one grade per day. So, and speaking with transportation and Sandy, there's going to be no issues whatsoever. So you'll see all those communication pieces come out tomorrow. Central school, the only grade level that needs to be assessed per the state is grade 4. The other ones, you'll see it's more of a welcoming in, a meet and greet, understanding practices and procedures. We already have some fun things planned for the students, and we're certainly going to take care of them those days. It just popped into my head real quick, going back to the middle school the week before. We've already talked to Fresh Picks. Lunch will be provided on those days if needed. All those things will be in place for students. Moving towards the draft of the hybrid schedule. So this is if we do phase 2 hybrid. As you can see, November is a challenging month. So we have, beginning on Monday, we have in person, and then we have no school on voting day, following by cohort A in person again, and then you see the flip. A would become remote, B would become in person. Then the following week, different type of model because of the day is Wednesday, which is no school, and then followed by week 3, which would be that standard what I talked about up top, would be the cohort A in on Monday, Tuesday, followed by remote Wednesday, Thursday, and then everyone virtual on Friday. I'm just going to point you to the last week real quick. We had discussions last meeting, and you'll see the new calendar next meeting next week. But December 1st would be an early release because of parent-teacher conferences, as well as the following day on the 2nd would be parent-teacher conferences. And we're going to be doing those via Zoom, and we can discuss that as we move a little bit further.
Okay, Mike, if I could?
Yeah.
Okay, so this would be the point, leave that on that screen. So this would be the point in the presentation where this looks like the recommendation is going to be a hybrid schedule for the entire month of November into early December. That is potentially an option for consideration. We are also talking about being back fully on the 2nd of November, and that will be coming up as another option. So that's really when we get to the recommendation piece. So I don't want people to get lost and think that this is the recommendation. This is just one option. And we also have to take into consideration once staff and students and families start to make their selections, what we have for capacity, what can we deliver, right? So our hope, again, remember the goal really is to get everyone back as safely and quickly as possible to our new normal. My target date really, or our target date, if you will, is really that 2nd of November. So if we, as we move through the presentation, please don't think that this is the only recommendation. This is just an option, a consideration. We need to have some flexibility just in case of capacity is impacted. But again, our goal is to get everyone back in person as quickly and safely as possible. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Okay, so this, as Dr. Messer just mentioned, you're going to see phase 3 come up after these, but in anticipation of phase 2, here are some of the challenges that we are anticipating. I think staffing is pretty standard, whether we're in person or virtual. And as Dr. Metzler mentioned in the beginning, it could mean possible placement changes, shifting of needs to make sure that we're meeting whoever selects virtual versus whoever selects hybrid. Arrival and dismissal is going to be a challenge no matter what model we're in, phase 2 or phase 3. And then, as you can see, there's a few more specifics in regards to central school with UAs, along with middle school, trying to make sure that you're supporting the students on those virtual days during the hybrid option. And then here are the pretty standard challenges that we're going to face: substitutes, duty coverages, and nurse coverages.
Mike, can I get back to staffing for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that staffing challenge, right? You saw this, at our high school at Pinkerton Academy. On any given day, for a whole host of reasons, we could end up with a staffing issue where we won't be able to provide in-person services. Like that happened to Pinkerton on Monday. We have a challenge tomorrow, which we had to communicate with 23 families earlier today, because we're not able to provide some in-person services tomorrow that we were hoping we would be able to do. So those families received those notices around 5:30 this evening. So that's really going to be a challenge. Again, you're going to hear me use the word capacity. Again, we want to have the capacity to make sure that everybody's choices are met, meaning that our remote crowd is feeling like they're getting what they need, and our in-person crowd is getting what they need. But again, it's just we don't really know if our staffing is going to match up perfectly, so we're going to have some challenges there. That's really one of our biggest challenges, because again, like what happened in Pinkerton on Monday and what's going to happen with us tomorrow, there's going to be days where we might not be able to offer exactly what is scheduled, and we'll have to be able to pivot real quickly to what I think we did really well at the beginning of the year. We might have to pivot to a remote day for unforeseen kind of challenges, and they typically would be around staffing. Thanks, Mike.
And just to speak, to the substitutes, HR had already sent a list to our buildings of people who are on the list and willing, and we've connected with some of them. It's just, it depends on everyone's life. So that substitute pool of, let's say we have about 40, it's down to about 15 right now. And that's if they're available on those days for those types of things. So shifting from the anticipated challenges is what drives some possible costs. Long-term substitutes, permanent substitutes, or what the word that's been flown around lately is proctoring. Then you have virtual teachers versus how we're going to monitor recess and lunches to make sure that everyone's still receiving their contractual time. Traffic detail, we are anticipating central school being a challenge with the initial numbers of what people may or may not select to pick up and drop off, and then the incurred costs of extra pay. And then in order to make our district more attractable to those 15 or 20 substitutes, I know that most districts have increased their substitute pay. And that also, speaking to the nurses, we can speak more specifically as we move forward, is possibly increasing substitute nurse pay as well. Okay, so in regards to phase 3, so phase 3 would be full return. That consists of choice of students who would be separated into 2 groups. That would be 5 days a week, or you are choosing purely virtual instruction. In order to make some of these things successful, you'll see some of these details in there. So as we mentioned in here, the students would have to select and then be locked in until the end of the second quarter, which is in January. that ensures our scheduling and meeting the needs of both the staff and the students don't shift dramatically. And then that also allows us to then plan as we move forward to what the spring and end of the year will look like. You'll see a regular school schedule, and I say that meaning it'll be as regular as possible. You can see, the middle, when we get down to some of the challenges, you'll see some greater challenges in regards to being driven by numbers on what the schedule may or may not look like at both buildings. We're going to have to make sure we're meeting the needs of both the students that are in school, but also the students that select virtual learning. You'll see some of those same things with the synchronous learning, some direct instruction. It's really going to be determined on, do we have 4 8th graders that choose remote and only 4 8th graders, but then in 7th grade you have 25 that choose remote. So a lot of those numbers will drive what we're currently doing. The transition week between each phase, whether it's phase 2 or phase 3, as Dr. Metzler mentioned, the target date is that November 2nd. So that transition week at the end of the testing and bringing the students in would be that week of the 26th. So you would see some altering of that schedule as well. So as we're planning and preparing to transition to either phase 2 or phase 3.
Mike, if I could?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so our staffs at both buildings are extremely accommodating. And so I'm just asking, I know, for some families, some sacrifices may need to be made in order for us to be able to get back in person, meaning you may not be able to have the teacher that you thought you had, or you may not be able to have the teacher that you actually want for a whole bunch of different reasons. So that flexibility, are very accommodating. So make your requests, but please just understand we're going to do the best we can based on capacity to honor everybody's request and make sure that we get, a schedule that meets the needs of whatever direction the school board chooses tonight. So if we are to do phase 2 relatively quickly through the month of October, take that transition week, which we can talk a little bit about the transition week in a second, because we're going to need some patience there. That'll look more like the spring. That's so teachers can be ready for, we're talking 80%, 75, 80% of the students that we're anticipating will select in person to be ready. Now you're going to ask how you're going to keep them 6 feet apart. We have some challenges, but we have some creative ideas at the building levels to try to meet those needs and be able to pull that off. But right now our recommendation, we have to work out a memorandum of understanding with our unions. That's an MOU, which you'll hear. I am happy to tell you that that's already in the works, meaning the union is working on some language that will meet their needs, and it could be around what deep cleaning looks like. It could be, what the mask requirements, they could have a whole host of language requests, and we will have some as well. We do believe that should go quickly. My hope is that I would have, in the event that we pick a direction tonight, that we would have an MOU hopefully for next Tuesday on the 13th, and that we'd be looking at phase 2, as quickly as that calendar that you were looking at earlier shows, and moving to that November 2nd date as our first, our new normal of just 2 cohorts. You're either remote or you're back, and see where it goes. But that's where we are. So Mike, go ahead with the rest.
I just want to speak again to what you started off with, and I think it's important to note that you could see some shifting, and to throw another scenario out there, let's say 3rd grade, 20 kids choose remote. So at some point we're going to have to shift students around so that those 20 students have a dedicated remote teacher versus instruction. Where it's more of a challenge at the middle school is because you're team-based. So we're really trying to work through some avenues there to provide the opportunity for the students to stay on team and continue that instruction with their classmates, but remotely rather than with in person. So you'll see some of the challenges that we had mentioned above. Nothing is far different than what is above, and same thing down the bottom about staffing. So same things. Okay, special education. really has done a phenomenal job of trying to accommodate as much as possible with in-person instruction and services already. As we transition in phase 2 or 3, you'll continue to see an increase of services provided. The key thing here to point out is the possible cost. So if for any reason, because of staffing, that we're unable to meet the needs of an IEP, we might have to contract outside services to come in. That's just an increased cost that we wanted to be people to be aware of. It's so that we're meeting what's required of us in the IEP. We're not sure. Again, that goes back to what we're going to keep saying: the staffing and the students on what they choose and select, and then that will allow us to determine the needs in special ed. Okay, so this is what I'll call probably the most important part in order to be successful in phase 2 and or phase 3. And in meeting with our nurses, it's imperative that we follow these protocols and procedures in regards to health and safety. Now, I'm going to go through this, and then I'm going to come back to what we've gathered for information. But the nurses who have weekly meetings with DHHS and meet with the state nursing associations around, there's an algorithm in order to determine when we should be sending students home if they're presenting any symptoms of COVID-19. It's pretty simple. As you can see, they follow through, and then at that part, they determine whether the student needs to be placed in the isolation or quarantine room, and the parents need to be called to come and pick up students. To emphasize even more would be really what the CDC is recommending now is all home screening. Our nursing team has done a great job. They've created these documents on their own. And again, these communications will be coming out from the buildings on how you self-screen prior to coming into school. Now, this has been, I'll say, not a worry, but a concern from the nursing office that they're going to be having to send students home who are presenting the symptoms. And as they've come to find out, or in discussions around the state, it seems as though most people are following the practices and procedures. So if their students are showing or presenting any of these symptoms, they are keeping the students home. And then you'll see that there's the algorithm down below on when you need to go get a test, a negative test, how many days you need to quarantine for, so forth and so on. Now, this is just our internal practices and procedures. When we get down to the last slide in regards to a positive case happening, we'll discuss some of those next steps. But I want to compliment the nurses. They've done a phenomenal job since we have opened up 4 services for special ed. They've done a great job educating the staff and discussing some of our sports things that have come up. They've really been on top of the ball, and they've really helped make some of our decisions, quite frankly, easier. Then down here, again, it goes into the self-screening. What are signs and symptoms, and what we'll be determining if they are in the school, if they're presenting any of these signs and symptoms. How we'll be going about determining if you live in the closed household, the 6 feet with 15 minutes, all those things that we've been talking about. And then the quarantine room. In each school, there's a dedicated quarantine room for students who do present any of the symptoms. Our students will be placed in the quarantine room for the safety of themselves and others until the parents are able to pick them up. It's monitored. It'll be continually monitored, and the students will be communicated with the whole time until they're able to exit the facility. Okay. Dr. Metzler, do you want to pick up, or do you want me to keep going?
We can keep going. I have a little bit to wrap this up at the end, but
Okay,
just want
perfect.
to do the facilities piece. And
yeah, so facilities has obviously, I think, been the main focal point for a lot of people, and I want to really commend Jeff Mackey and what he's been able to accomplish over this time, and the practices and procedures he's going to be, or has put in place, and will put into place when students return. Couple things that are different, we have some teachers who work late into the evening. We're going to have to start determining exit times so that we're able to turn the building around uninterrupted, and we're assuring that spots are cleaned before people are entering the next day. The rooms you'll see, as I've been trying to communicate with teachers, it's, you're going to see, we're going to set up sample classrooms for them to see, and we'll send out pictures, but you're going to see far more, that's not going to work. You'll see far less within the classroom. You'll see appropriate spacing for desks and chairs and tables. It's going to be, it's just going to be a different feel. I guess that's the easiest way I keep explaining it to people. PPE, we have plenty in stock. We have more ordered. We're ready to go when and if necessary, and we'll discuss some of the general practices below. Highly touched surfaces will be cleaned throughout the day, common areas throughout the day, and then night cleaning, you'll see the deep cleaning within the nurses, and if the quarantine room was accessed, classrooms, special education, PTOT, those types of areas. Maintenance will continue. He mentioned it a long time ago about how they're going to change the filters far more and continue to monitor the exhaust and ventilator units. Key piece here is the HVAC testing. The indoor air quality has been completed. The report had confirmed that it's in working order. All the numbers came back. I'm not a facilities expert. I know others can speak to it if the question arises. But also more importantly, we had the air exchange test completed last Thursday. And I know Mr. Mackey was in touch with them today in regards to getting a draft to make sure that the air exchange is coming in and going out appropriately. Continued, we mentioned that chairs and desks will be arranged so that there's the most amount of space possible in between. Hallways, already working on traffic patterns. It's kind of amazing to think the time that both building administrations have placed into traffic patterns, staggering travel times so that you don't ring a bell and a flood of students are coming out into the hallway. It'll all be predetermined. No lockers until things currently change, so that there's no hanging out or extra stuff within the school. And then getting into restrooms, limits. We talked about ins and outs. How many are in at a time. All those things, as Dr. Metzler mentioned, will be coming out of the building level work here. And then pick up and drop off. So some of our challenges, the board supported us in hiring 2 more custodial staff, which is outstanding. We put may need more. We're not sure until we see the work when people are back in the building. Facility use, I know we want to make sure that we're creating a safe learning environment for staff and students each day. So those requests will be, I think Dr. Metzger, I think you said, what did you say on that about?
Our facility outside
Yes.
groups would not be permitted to use our buildings at this time. They will be for our students, because we need to make sure, obviously, that they deep cleaned and they're ready to receive staff and students. So outside groups, we'd have little or no control over that. That just didn't make a lot of sense to me at this time. It's something we can look at down the road, but for now, I think we need to make sure that our facilities meet the needs of educating and providing a safe place for our kids. So I think that would probably put us at risk a little if we had outside groups and that we didn't have control over.
Perfect. And then, I think facilities has been pretty straightforward with what's going on. It's, like I said, there's sanitation jars in each room now. They're in the hallways. The HVAC, the vents, they were there again today, continuing to maintain and make sure that everything's operating appropriately. And then the one that keeps sticking out to everybody is, possibly portable sinks, wash stations upstairs at Central School. So we also wanted to provide a general overview, and that's why you can see the titles here. It's not the nitty gritty. It's not the micro level stuff. This is more macro. It's the teachers and students need to complete the self-assessment prior to entering each day. Parents need to assess their kids. Masks are going to be mandatory no matter what phase we're in. And then the nursing will send out the types of masks that are appropriate or not appropriate They've done a great job of putting that together, that handout as well. They've had to educate the staff on what's appropriate and not appropriate. We encourage people to bring their own, but at the same time, we're able to provide if needed. We have plenty of the medical masks on hand. Hand sanitizing when you enter and exit throughout the day. You'll notice in both facilities there are jugs located everywhere. Important times, cafeteria eating, outside playing. We've talked about putting elementary students into sections of the playground each day and rotating them so that we're able to maintain areas and clean them when needed. Same thing with staff. Entering, exit, we're washing hands. Again, just taking all the proper precautions, and we keep reiterating, we want the facilities to be a safe learning spot for both staff and students, and we want people to feel safe entering the facilities each day. Windows, when possible, weather permitting, it's encouraged that we're going to keep them open just to allow more airflow. And then down the bottom, I talked about students using designated playground zones that will rotate. Same thing, washing hands, face masks. Mask breaks will be out throughout the day as well. Okay, so if positive or active COVID occurs, it's important that people are aware of those steps. So when an active case, a single positive, whatever may occur within the facility, that's when we as a school have to contact DHHS. And once we contact DHHS, they are the ones that drive the work on who's contacted, who they felt was at risk with the close contact. They have all of their steps and procedures in place that we will then follow. They're the ones that contact families or students that were in close contact of the positive case. That is not done through the school. We are a working partner at that point. So once there is an active case, we contact them, they begin the tracing procedure, we make the determinations on what we just said below. So in abundance of caution, do we send an entire class home? Do we send home a few students? Do we send home a few staff? That's really going to be determined on, was the students, I'm sure you've all been aware of the scenarios. Did it happen at a sport event and they brought it in the next day? Were they not in school? All those scenarios go into play when making those decisions. Then also, if a multiple positive outbreak occurs, same thing, we contact DHHS, they determine who, what, when, where, and why, but then us as a district, what do we do? Do we pivot the whole school to virtual learning for 14 days? All of those scenarios that play out will be based on really managing the positive cases. That's it, Dr. Metzler.
So, again, thank you for your patience. And so this is as clear as mud until we clear this up, right? So looking at what I'm looking for a directive. I'm looking for a direction, if you will. I'm hoping that the direction will be get us back to fully in person by the 2nd of November. The next question would be like, what about all those details beyond these details? And so those are building level planning sessions, right? Each, the central school and the middle school are very different, same but different. And so all those details to meet that directive, right? So, and then hopefully that's what the next week would look like. We'd be able to come back to you on the 13th of October with, right, capacity, who selected, what, how many teachers do we have, families, what have they selected? They need to know what they're selecting. Are they selecting a fully back in, or are they selecting a hybrid? So that's a decision we need to make tonight. And hopefully we'll be able to come back with an MOU. Again, that language will define a lot of our work at the buildings, because that language will be very specific about the working environment, not just for students, but also for staff, so that they feel that all their needs are being met. And then we'd be ready to get into our testing schedule in our transition week, and hopefully be either in a hybrid, full hybrid, or a full return as early as the 2nd of November. The final question would be, what's my recommendation? My recommendation was I'd like to meet our goal. I'd like to get everyone back as soon as possible, as safely as possible. I do believe we can do that by the 2nd of November. We need some planning time. We certainly need the direction, the directive. We need to get that MOU carved out with our unions. We need to make sure that our families have all identified exactly what they need and want, and then we need to make sure that we have the staff to meet those needs. Now, in any event that we can't do all that again we could bring this back to the table on October 13th, a week from tonight, and explain what the challenges are and why we can or cannot do what we want to do. Cautiously optimistic. That meaning I do believe we can get this done. I do believe we can get our goal to get everyone back that can be back and wants to be back, and meet the needs of those people that need to be remote for whatever those reasons are. No judgment. If people need to be remote, they'll have access, and obviously the goal would be that the students that choose remote would feel that they're getting the same educational opportunities that the students that are in person. It won't be exactly the same, but hopefully they would feel that it was equal in many ways. So I hope that that's clear in terms of what we're asking for. We're really looking to the board for direction so that we can execute. So Mike, I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to answer. Hopefully.
Oh, that was a great wrap up. Thank you.
So Caitlin?
Thank you both. Yes, thank you both. That was pretty comprehensive, I think. I'm sure there may be questions from board members, so I'm going to open that up at this point. Yell or wave at me if I can see you. If you have questions that you want to ask about the plan and recommendation we've just been presented with.
I guess I'll start. I love to ask questions.
Questions are good.
Yeah, just a couple questions, and I think Dr. Metzler, you answered some of my questions before this, and I'd like to just give a couple minutes just to recap a couple things that I think parents and community would like to hear. But I'll ask the questions first, if you don't mind. The substitute pool, is it fair to say that it's kind of an open invite to parents, that anybody that's willing and able to jump into that pool, because we could be looking for resources as we've seen in other communities?
Yeah, I think, Dave, I think that's fair. In the past, whenever we've had a shortage, even bus drivers or whatever, we reach into the community and try to encourage people, and even if we can come up with incentives. But again, I think once we're able to assess exactly what our capacity is, we'll know what we need. That being said, parents that are willing and able and certainly qualified to participate in some of this substitute, we wanted them before COVID, right? So, we certainly, we need you now, we needed you then, and we're going to need you in the future. So anybody that's able and willing, by all means, contact HR and get your paperwork in.
Okay. And then, so thank you for that. Definitely want to help and get that word out to the community. For those watching, we've got friends, family that can be out there to volunteer. We're definitely going to need you. The next one is, have we already hired the 2 janitorial staff, or is that still in progress?
That job those jobs were posted immediately following that meeting.
Yep.
And then, it has not been hired yet. That's the simple answer, but it is in process of setting up that. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Really, the only other question is around the MOU. I know it's early to tell, but is there anything that you would expect out of that MOU that we should be thinking about right now, or do you think it's going to be straightforward? What's the indicator from your discussions, Dr. Metzler?
Well, those are some good questions. MOUs can become very complicated documents, but that just has been the history with the working relationship between the board, our unions, and certainly our administrative staff. So I think it's just it's just an agreement. It's a change in working conditions. So we're guaranteeing certain things would take place, and they were able to hold us accountable, and we're able to hold them accountable, and we'll hold the students accountable. And it could be simple things about an expectation for masks, and what do you do if when you have somebody that's non-compliant. I would imagine it'll have the deep cleaning piece. I know there are some concerns with air exchange rates, and so we have some testing going on, some good data on that. So it's typically around those items, but we asked the unions to draft, and they're in the process of doing that. So we'll get an opportunity to take that language and talking to Caitlin. We certainly our attorneys are ready and able to help us with the language that we need, so that we're not, making promises that we can't deliver on either. Right.
Thank you. Just to recap a couple of things that we just had some email communications on. You had stated that the intent right now, no matter what plan we go with, but for the remainder of the year, we would be looking to have remote choice for any of those parents, correct? That's unless something else happens, but right now the intent is we'd have remote learning for those parents and children that wish to continue throughout the year.
That's correct. And we'll see how the vaccine goes and the effectiveness and all those, but I think, for our community, I think that's a really great thing to be able to offer. I don't want the people that select remote, I don't want them to feel like they're homeschooling their children without the support of the district. I want them to stay connected in any way, shape, and form that we can. That's going to be a really important thing because, as people's lives get busy and people, and if it's a small percentage, if it drops down to like 10% or something, we want to make sure that they stay engaged, because I think for most of those folks, their intention is to be back in person at some point with us when they can, when they feel safe, and when their personal choices allow them. So, but yeah, that choice has really been, an important part of the plan, and it's going to need to be part of the plan for at least the remainder of this school year. It could even go into next fall.
All right.
And more specifically on the choice, the first choice would obviously be within the next couple of days. That would take you through the end of Q2, which is sometime in January. Prior to the end of Q2, you'll get another selection of choice, which would take you through Q3. And then obviously the last quarter, again, we would do the same thing. Dropping it at the quarters just allows us, again, more internally to schedule appropriately so that everyone is receiving what they need. And it allows us to not have significant changes through a 45-day period within school.
Okay. No, that's great.
I think sorry, Dave. I think some of our high school parents at Pinkerton are experiencing, they're shifting to remote kind of on the fly. They're changing kind of in the middle. We're asking for some commitment to for periods of time just for planning purposes. I think that would be helpful to have that information.
Okay.
Again, we want to make sure whatever we design that we can deliver. We don't want to design something and then not have the capacity or resources to do it correctly.
Okay. So thank you for that. That's good information, especially on the quarterly look at it. I think that's powerful and good. The next one that I had emailed you over was about what is that? If we go full time, if we go back on the 2nd, that week before, can you speak a little bit more about what's going to be happening that week? Both what you would expect from a teachers and administrative lens, as well as what parents and students would most likely see.
Mike, do you want to start with that?
Yeah,
or you?
Absolutely. So I'm giving you simple answers. One is we don't want to lapse a whole week of education, okay? But we also want to allow appropriate transition time for our staff. So when I say you'll see a modified schedule for that week. You'll see some direct instruction move to the morning specifically to allow for appropriate transitional time in the afternoon for our staff. You may see a purely I'll call it a Google Classroom or Seesaw day, where the students will access their assignments like they did in the spring to allow for our staff members, again, that appropriate transition time so that they are prepared for what's arriving on that Monday. So that schedule will be, again, delivered a little bit more as well once we know our numbers. How many people are we transitioning in? How many people, those would be some of those drivers of that schedule, but that'll be a modified schedule that week.
Okay.
And Mike and Dave, we've asked our teachers to do quite a bit. And so I know there's been some talk about, we had talked about, and we never really we never locked a date in. We talked about, reevaluating around the 20th of October. But we also, if you remember correctly, that conversation was like, we're going to watch what's going on around. We're going to look at the data. We're going to come back with a plan. So our timeline has been moved up a little bit. And so, we asked teachers to focus. We asked our HEA, folks to focus on doing this remote thing really well. And they did, and they have, and they continue. So, as part of our discussions, you talk about MOU, we're talking about a transition week so that they can make that transition smoothly to in-person learning. Setting up their classrooms will be very different than it has been, over the summers in the past, and because they won't have as much furniture and they certainly won't have as many things to set up, but they do still have a lot of planning. So while they're planning and getting their classrooms ready for students to be there in person, we're also asking them to do some asynchronous learning with their students during that week. So that's what we're asking at the beginning. I asked for a little bit of patience in the event that we select this model, that transition week, it won't be like the whole fall. It may feel a little more like the spring, but keep in mind that's that's something that's helping us meet the goal of getting everybody back as quickly and safely as possible. I think that's a reasonable ask in terms of planning. So we were supportive.
Thank you. My last one is more of one of the last questions that I asked you, and I'm still, in my mind back and forth on this, is about the tents. Can you speak more about the value the tents are going to bring, knowing that, if we were to go back full time, it wouldn't be till November 2nd. So we, the month of October, I don't say wasted the time with not having anybody in there, but what they would be used for in October, and then what you're considering or what the administration is considering in November.
So, Mike can get into a little bit more detail. I mean, my intention was obviously through the month of October, whether it's the testing, whatever, that we use those outside spaces in a creative way. But I think those are going to be building level planning, but that is space that is expected to be used somehow, some way. It could be during lunch. It could be, we're going to be spreading out. So we picked up quite a bit of space. So, Mike, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more about
Yep.
some of the creative ways we're going to use that space.
Yeah, and also part of the caveat was the tent was inventory. So in order to secure a tent for even the month of November, we had to make sure that we were securing it at an earlier date. So I know the tech team, they ran an access point out to the one in the courtyard this week. It was some of our larger grades, which would be 6th grade, I think is our greatest number. You're going to see some of those classes get priority so that we can, again, it goes into spacing. They will be used once we're back in the facility without a question. Some of the after school activities that we anticipated, it turns into a scheduling within the want and need of students too. So it's not that the staff wasn't trying. It's also driven by what we've been saying. It's the numbers of the people that sign up for these things. So the other part that we want to reiterate about the tent is the safety procedures that will be put in place to use them appropriately at the appropriate times during the day, appropriate weather, things of that nature. So the tents will be used in November. There is no question about it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got for now.
Anybody else? Questions?
Hi, it's Jim. How you doing?
Go ahead, Jim.
My questions are all over the place. I'm sorry. I just wanted to, the first thing I just want to go back to what David said about substitutes. Dr. Metzler, if you could talk about this. This isn't just, David, I'm not suggesting you meant this, but I just wanted for you to talk about the requirements, because this isn't just people volunteering. We need some level of background checks or whatever it is. This isn't like hop in for the day and watch a class and hop out. I mean, there's testing COVID requirements. There's maybe a background check. I don't know if there's education required. I don't know, but if you could talk about that, please.
Yeah, this is beyond a volunteer program, and I do believe we screen our volunteers in a really efficient and effective way with background checks. But this is like being hired for a job, essentially. You go through the whole process through HR, and certainly need to be qualified. Now, obviously we have different levels of qualifications. So if it's to be an instructor or teacher, if you will, that's one thing. If you're a paraprofessional, that would be something different. And so I think, we would kind of rake and sort and see where people fit. Sometimes, people have their own idea. They might be super qualified, but they really want to contribute in a way that's in a paraprofessional role, or in the cafeteria, or drive a bus, or whatever they choose. We're excited that people want to be a part of it. But I think if the concern is that they will, if the concern was how they will be processed, they will be processed like when we're onboarding an employee, which is part of something we need to talk a little bit later about, because we have a new business platform that will help speed up the whole process of onboarding staff, which is great. It puts it all on one platform, and it will mainstream it. We can talk about that later. But for now, yeah, you are absolutely correct, Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you. So I guess this is where I'm at. All right. There's a lot of, for people trying to make a decision that are on the fence, right? Is spacing going to be 6 feet? If it's only going to be 3 feet, my kid's not going to get their teacher. I have to drive them to school, and a couple other things. Maybe I'm not going to send my kid. So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions that you will probably get answered this week. Especially when it comes to staffing. I really want to know what's going to happen to the remote kids, are they going to keep their teachers? I want to see the numbers, how many kids, take a particular grade. Do you have any rough idea? Take any grade you want. You don't even need to mention it. How many % of kids do you think are going to go, and how many teachers? Are there going to be situations where you're going to have to tell parents that, we got to run a lottery. We do not have enough space in the classrooms we have for this grade, and with the amount of teachers, we can only hold X amount of students. You think we might be in that situation?
Well, I think back to your point, if we're talking rough estimates, based on, I'm thinking, we're in that 75 to 80%. I think we'll want some sort of in-person learning. We just didn't get a real, the delta between, who was interested in hybrid and who was interested in, a full return. There really it wasn't significant. It was, we were both hovering right around that 80%. It might be a little bit different for staff, but I think, again, I think this is like one of those things where we need a direction so that we can get that information and plan, and and those are building level kind of things that we'll need to do based on what we have. See, what we don't want to do is design something, for instance, and have a classroom full of kids with no teacher there and a teacher on a screen because we don't have teachers, right? So we need to make sure that we're able to deliver exactly what we're telling parents. If parents select in-person learning, I think there's an expectation that the teacher will actually be in the room, not on a screen, right? So I think that's one of those things where I think we want to make sure that we're delivering exactly with what we said, and we want to be able to deliver it to all our kids, not just some grades, but all grades, the same experience. Now, I don't know, until, if people are listening and they're concerned about 3 feet, 6 feet, those sorts of things. I mean, those are really specific decisions. Like if you said, it's going to be 3 feet, not 6 feet, how many people will not come back because of that? I don't know. If you said masks, if you said, we're not going to mandate masks all day, we're going to let them not wear masks, that may change some people's minds. So I do agree that those details are important. I can tell you that our goal has not changed. The big goal is get them back as quickly and safely as possible. So we're not compromising safety in any way, shape, or form. So I think at that building level, if safety needs to be increased, and I believe that MOU is going to be a lot that's going to be driven on a safe working atmosphere for staff, and it should be. And so those things I feel really good about. I think we'll do a really good job. If it's how you feel about what's being presented to you, and you have additional questions and you don't have an opportunity, I just encourage you to reach out to one of the buildings. You certainly can, Mr. Flynn or myself, if there's something that's going to help make you feel better about the choice you're going to make. We certainly are here to help. And I don't mean your choice just to come back. If your choice, I want to choose remote, but I'm worried I'm not going to get as much as the people in person, we can help you with that as well. So whatever your choice is, we're not judging. We just want to make sure that we can meet the needs of all the groups. People in the trenches delivering the services, obviously our students, and whether they choose to be home or in school, that they get a powerful education like they always have from the Hampstead School District. So,
If I can jump in on the spacing real quick, I want to focus on that. The priority is 6 feet. That's what we've been talking with staff. It's 6 feet. And then when it is not possible, you may see 5 feet or 4 feet. The goal is never to walk into any space within our buildings and pull out a 3-foot tape measure and say, that's adequate. Every time we're walking in or setting up anything, we start with 6 and figure out how it's possible to make sure that that is being accomplished first. And Mr. Mackey has done a great job of, there's already stuff being removed from classrooms and placed in, storage until things can change, so that we're opening all square footage in each space. So that's not the perfect answer, but I just want to continue to focus that the goal is 6 feet, no matter what phase we're in, phase 2 or 3. And then when needed or necessary, we may have to decrease that to 5 or 4 or to 3.
Well, and so what makes me comfortable with this is, we have great administrative staff and they do an outstanding job. But, what happens when you're not watching, right? So our instructional staff, whether it's mold spores, whether it was mosquitoes, and certainly something as serious as this, they have always done an outstanding job at making sure people are safe. So I'm not concerned that our staff won't be able to adhere to all the criteria that they need to make sure people are safe. I feel 100%. I just, my concern is, again, it's just going to come down to capacity. How many people pick what they pick, and do we have the capacity to deliver exactly what we're promising? And we'll be honest, and our building leaders will be honest when they get their building level meetings. Their staff will be very honest with them if they're being asked to do things that they don't believe they can do. So I think that's an exercise that we need to go through. Now, some people may say you should have went through it already, and I would disagree. I mean, it's hard to design something when you don't know what you're designing it for. So that's really why the direction here is really important, so that we can execute, get the MOU lined up, get staff on board, and get back to our new normal as early as, like I said, November 2nd. That's been the target date.
So I guess I'm right back where I was. Okay. I don't mind you going forward and getting all those data points, but that's when I think we should take a vote. Isn't that what you think, Caitlin and David and Megan? So if you came back, if you did your research and came back and told me 3 feet, I'd say no. I would say no. If the exchange rate information came back, I would say no. So I don't mind giving you direction to go get that information. I mean, there's a lot of parents trying to make a decision. Do I want my kids to play in the playground? Are you going to clean the playground between each person, between each playground session? I mean, that's something I just thought in my head this second, but there's a lot of information that people are trying to get. I know you guys will figure it out, but for a comprehensive, report on opening, like I said, I don't mind telling you to go forward and get that information. And if everything plays out well, then yeah. But right now, we don't have the exchange information. I don't know about staffing.
We have preliminary exchange rate, and it's average. Our exchange rates are average, and except for interior rooms without windows, it's not a big surprise to anybody. I think, for us, I mean, if we couldn't meet all the safety criteria, or there was some other deal breaker between now and the next week, we'd be coming back recommending to you to change your mind, right? So right now we're recommending what we believe is a safe plan to get children back in the buildings as early as as early as the 2nd of November after the testing schedule. But I understand what you're saying. It's just I think this was the way we were asked to put this together, and we did, and we're prepared to bring kids back as safely and quickly as possible. And so that's what we're looking for, is the direction.
Yeah, I have to say that I think essentially we have the same amount of information that we had prior to making the decision for remote learning back in August. Dr. Metzler and Mr. Flynn and the administrators were pretty honest with us at that point when we were asked to consider the recommendation and take a vote on it, that they would then come back in the set amount of time with the details. And I do think that until we give them the go-ahead, you know, frankly, all of our teachers, all of our administrators are in the midst of this right now. So to ask them to devote a ton of time when they don't even know if we're going to go ahead with the recommendations, I do think presents a challenge. And as Dr. Metzler just said, you know, if something in the next week, say we vote tonight, and we do give them direction to move ahead with the recommendation that they've presented, you know, if something drastically changes, if we do find out that our capacity is not there, we can change our mind. One of the whole things that I felt was important when we voted on remote learning was the discussion that things are going to change and we're going to have to pivot, whether it's to in-person, whether it's back to remote, if there is need to do that. I think that's kind of the theme of this whole year, is we're going to have to pivot depending on what's put in front of us. We know that, frankly, we get different information about COVID every week. Sometimes it goes back and forth. But I think, especially looking at this timeline, which I do think makes sense, I want to give them as much time as possible if we're going to go with this recommendation. You know, if you really look at the calendar, for example, with the testing schedule, I mean, we're talking about a week from today with getting the first group in to start that. So, you know, I certainly want to give everyone as much time for prep as we can. That's just my thought as far as going ahead with a vote at this evening.
I mean, I don't know if it's time to make a motion, or is any other questions?
Go ahead, Megan.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so I just have a couple questions. I need to organize myself. Okay, so I don't think I'm connecting the dots. So I'm a little bit confused as to how phase 2 comes into all of this. Is it going to be one of the options that we present to the families, or is it a not, I don't want to say hold me over, but a transition period until we get into fully in person on November 2nd? I guess I'm still a little bit confused.
So Mike, and you feel free to jump in. So we're flexible. We provided the options. Like, so if hybrid was all that you thought was we were capable of at that point, we certainly could do that. Our goal really was to try to get everyone back as early as the 2nd, so that time during October there could serve as a, that testing phase 2, more kids back, before we get to everyone back. Or it could be as simple as that, that hybrid model, which we also put a schedule in there. So the board has some options, some choices, if you will, about what you're comfortable with next. I don't want to mislead the board in that regard, but the goal has always been to try to get everyone back, right? So that's why I keep getting to that. For me, my recommendation would be try to use the October dates to get kids back in, for testing, whatever, get the transition week knocked out, and then get people back for the 2nd of November. If that was too much too soon, we certainly could go to the hybrid model where there was 2 in, 2 out. We're really asking the board to choose a path for us. And right, so you ask for a recommendation, we give a recommendation, but you also have some options. Our recommendation, well, that was our recommendation, but you certainly could recommend the hybrid version for the 2nd of November, and we would plan for that.
Can Megan, I'm going to let you keep going, but I just want to clarify this because I totally get where you're coming from here. So if we were to go with the recommendation of choice for anyone who wants to be in on starting November 2nd. We are utilizing next week and the week after on the state testing acclimating process that you presented tonight, where essentially it's 1 grade in per day. And then on the 2nd, we go fully, then we have that transition week, the last week of October, and then fully in, if we went with that recommendation, on November 2nd. Right?
That's correct.
Okay, I wanted to like lay it out so I could see it in my mind. Okay, thank
really
you.
could
Go
be-
ahead,
it could
Megan, I'm
be-
sorry.
Oh, all right, go ahead.
Oh, that was helpful. Thank you. My next question is, so when we get back to school, so say we get back to school on the 2nd, we walked through some of the home assessments, but I'm wondering if we're going to have people in front of the building simply taking temperatures before the kids enter. I guess we'd also consider I don't know if the bus drivers would do it, but for students taking the buses, having their temperatures taken before
So
they
we've
get
met
on.
with the nurses, and they meet with their statewide nursing association. And the CDC no longer requires temperature checks. It's now a self-monitoring system. So in initial discussions with the nurses, it would be the self-monitoring at home prior to them getting on the bus. The bus drivers do not take temperatures. So really that would be the point of entrance if they're on the bus. And then if they're getting parent pickup and drop off, the parents would be the one self-screening prior to entering the facility.
Okay. I think that was all I had, actually.
Okay. Speaking to that real quickly about the monitoring, I have faith in all of our parents, because if we have a bunch of kids coming in and getting sick and getting sent home, we're going to end up back to remote. So I'm hoping that everybody does their assessment well. I know
Being
that,
sarcastic, aren't you?
no, I'm not, because I do think that, you know, when you
Do
think
you
about
really
the fact
think
that if we
there aren't parents in town that don't send their kids to school with a slight cold or fever?
no, I'm not. So I think we're in a different situation. I don't think you can evaluate it the same way as last year, somebody sending their kid to school with a cold. I do think we're in a different situation. Maybe that's me being optimistic, but I do believe that people understand the repercussions of sending kids in sick right now, even if they don't believe that it's something to be concerned about COVID-wise. We end up having to pivot back to remote if we can't utilize the self-monitoring system.
Don't be like some people right now that are still in their offices or sending their kids in that we've heard about. We can't have that.
No, we can't. I just,
No.
you know, it's going to happen. You know.
Just to bring some to this conversation, because I think this was one of our biggest apprehensions, the nurses themselves, but through their meetings and throughout what's going on, I'd say that the majority of people are doing the appropriate thing and keeping their students home. Now, all that doubt runs into our head, of course, but what they've also noticed through our discussions around the state is they're going to see pretty quickly that, as I showed through the algorithm and what we consider presenting those symptoms, students will be sent home, and that is it's part of the process. And if you send your student and they do have a cough or a runny nose or things of that nature, they will be sent home and they can't return until they have a negative test. Those are the procedures that will be put in place. So we have to adhere to those, as you guys have mentioned, in order for either one of these phases to be successful.
Thanks, Mike. We can also be hopeful that wearing masks will cut down on those things in general.
Right.
again, maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but that is one of the benefits of masks. I know not everyone loves them, but that is a benefit of masks. Are there any other questions we want to discuss? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, my two quick questions, hopefully. If we went to phase 3 November 2nd, is there a chance that we'd increase the amount of students coming in with IEPs sooner, or would we still keep the schedule for October?
So you'd see an increase in that whether you select phase 2 or phase 3.
Okay, and in October.
October, through the state testing, we'll probably maintain the schedule as needed for parents.
Okay.
And then as we move through that 2-week window of that, then you'd see the transition begin in special ed.
Okay, and then this goes along, I think, with phase 3 possibly, and if we go to that, substitute pay. I know that that's been a question all along in other districts. I've talked to a few teachers in other districts that their administration has raised the pay for substitutes. Is that something that we're looking to do as well? Because I know ours is, I'd say, lower than surrounding towns, but that might help to entice anybody who would consider.
I think, you know,
Yeah, they
talked a little
mentioned that.
about, you know, an incentive, you know, to
Okay.
to get more people. You know, whenever we've done this, I don't know, it's like a calling, and this is a little different calling, but
Yep.
I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I do believe we should compensate. We don't want volunteers. We want paid employees in these positions, but it has not increased the pool just because we increased the pay, right? The people that want to do it, and now maybe it depends on how significant we've changed it, but we've made we did that with our nurses, remember, and you know, and a few other times we've raised, but that certainly was something we should do and take a look at. So we'll come back with a recommendation about what we think that figure should be. But that's in the plan about some increased pay for folks.
Okay, thank you.
The one I would recommend, if possible this evening, is nursing support, so that we can post those jobs. And through the recommendation and working with the nurses again, we don't know, this is the part that we don't know the extra traffic, or maybe we won't have extra traffic, but we certainly want to have an LNA on hand if someone is quarantined, as I mentioned earlier, about monitoring those students when they are coming into school with the symptoms. But having another set of hands within the nursing office would help. It can also be in between buildings if needed. If we're seeing a spike somewhere at Central School, they can be transient. So I think we spoke about having 2 LNA posted positions.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, have you guys discussed the additional need for behavioral health or emotional support? Do we need any additional staffing, or have you seen any? I know, you know, we might not be seeing it because, you know, the kids are all online right now, but I'm sensing that, you know, the parents are feeling that their kids are more stressed out because of COVID. And even if they go back in, they still could have the stress of wearing masks and being separated, and some of their students not there or whatnot. But have you guys talked about if you need additional staff?
So we have spoken about that. As you mentioned, Jim, it's a topic for everyone. More specifically, what our teachers are seeing. I think that's one that you have to wait and see. We have an amazing student service group who have already been accessing their students and their caseloads as needed. I think that would be something we come back, as Dr. Metzler mentioned, you know, when we get back into school or back into whatever we may be, you know, if some of the counselors in the middle school, their normal visits, let's just say, are 7 a day, and all of a sudden it goes from 7 to 21. That would be something that we'd be coming back saying, you know, it'd be great if we could have another student service member of the team for the 2020-21 school year.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Metzler, you mentioned exchange rates on some of the interior rooms that don't have windows. Do you think we'll be able to utilize those as a classroom?
Well, again, I think that's, at the building level plans, I mean, those would be the first rooms that we, obviously we're going to use the rooms with the best exchange rates. We want to use the tents, we want to spread out as much as possible. I had some preliminary data. Although those exchange rates aren't as good as the other rooms. I'm not quite sure. I mean, Jeff Mackey's on the call. I think, Mike, you had an opportunity to take a look at it. I don't know, we haven't really fleshed out every room as far as the exchange rates just yet, or have we?
Well,
do we-
Dr. Metzler, this is this is Jeff Dowd here. I know Jeff Mackey's on the call as well, and one important thing to note with the setup of a lot of our rooms is we have the ventilators right in the rooms. So when you're talking about an inside room, it's probably less an issue of the window and more an issue of the fact that the units that we have right now draw air directly from the outside, whether it's heat or whether it's just on fan. Those are drawing the air directly in from the outside, and coupled with the improvements that we've made in our ventilation exhaust system, I think you'll find that the presence or the ability to introduce fresh air from those ventilator units is more of an issue, is more of the thing to keep an eye on, much more than any windows in the classrooms themselves. You can't really have windows open necessarily effectively when it's 0 degrees out, 10 degrees out. But the effectiveness of fresh air being introduced into the room is probably going to be in our school system, in our buildings, largely driven by those ventilators, which do go directly from the outside. I don't know if Jeff Mackey, if you have anything to add to that.
Nope, you covered it.
I know I made a throwaway comment earlier. Oh, wait a minute. Did my headset just come out? Sorry. Anyways, I know I made a throwaway comment about the playground earlier, but I was just thinking about that. I'm putting my parent hat on, which I have on 24 hours a day, but I take my kids to the park and we play basketball and tennis and play in the field, but we haven't gone on the playground yet. So I guess I do have a real question. How is the playground going to be sanitized? And two, do you need more monitoring of the playground? Because obviously now you're not just kind of letting the kids go out there and there's a couple of people watching them. Now we're almost like going to be monitoring for social distance also. So do you need more, you're going to have more people out there to monitor them?
In regards to the playground, I know Mr. Collins and Dr. Cheney have already done a phenomenal job. When I say they were going to be split into groups or sections, I don't know how to specifically the vocabulary they were using, but one group won't follow another group on a swing set. So there'll be time to clean in between if necessary. That when we talk about high traffic areas or high traffic times in which, as you just mentioned, kids are it's going to be their outside time, whatever it may be. In regards to monitoring, I hate to say the same thing to you, Mr. Sweeney, but it's going to determine on our numbers. And it's really going to drive the duty schedule and making sure people are in the right places. But the cleaning of the high traffic areas, the swings, the light switches, the bathrooms, that will be done continuously. And having the extra staff, custodial staff, someone could be, I know Mr. Mackey's been working on a schedule as well, could be stationed there during that time. So,
Right.
I know you mentioned your parent hat. I think a lot of us that are determining these plans have our parent hat on quite a bit when we're working through anything.
Well, I just know that, even, I'm not getting fixated on the playground, but I know, parents are looking for information to make decisions. They may decide to send their kid back, but they could say, you know what, don't go on the equipment. You know what I mean? I'm okay with that.
And that's certainly an accommodation that we could support parents. If that's their thing, that would be communication, and we can have alternative activities.
Right.
Those
are plenty of things that we can help support families with.
Right.
Yeah, and on that note, Jim and Mike and everyone actually on the call, in the event we put together our plan and we believe it's safe, and if parents are concerned with particular things that they notice or things that they heard, we're going to encourage them just to reach out, and it could be reaching out to the building principal, a classroom teacher, could be me, could be Mr. Flynn, whatever, and one could be this would be better, this is an idea that might make this better, or this is something I'm not comfortable with. Can you please exclude my child from X, Y, and Z? And so those accommodations, I guess Mike could say the same thing you just said, was basically those are building level, individual, specific things that could be addressed for families that may be concerned, even though we believe it's safe, they may not necessarily agree. So they may want everything but that one particular thing. So we'll work around
I
those.
just think of the Triple E from last year, how we sent out the Google form. Do you want your kids sprayed? Do you want the staff to spray them? Do you want them to stay in? We made all those accommodations and supported the families in their choice. So I can see something like that.
Leland, is it okay if I make a motion? You're on mute.
What?
Oh, sorry, Jim, you got a question?
Well, I was going to say the same thing, but and I'm not going to jump in front of you and make a motion right now, but I'll just say what I was thinking, that I actually didn't want to make a motion. I just wanted a consensus to direct Dr. Metzler to move forward so we could take a vote next week. I don't feel that I have all the information to say yes. I rather say, yes, I have enough for you to go ahead, and when Mr. Yusenka comes back next week, we could all make a vote. I think everything's pointing in the right direction. I need information to make decisions. And I don't feel I have enough, but I feel I do have enough to say, go ahead. But that's me. So I don't know, if you still want to make your motion, if people just want to talk about what I just said. Or I'll make a motion next week if things don't look right. I don't know, because I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear the 6 feet turn into 5 feet to 4 feet. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying anybody's doing that intentionally, but I just need that information to make a decision. And I'm not ready to make that decision. So if you make a motion, I will say no. But it's not no because I don't support what has been done or what might be done. I'm just letting everybody know.
So,
Which is, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
so maybe my motion will help, but if it's not, I'd still like to make the motion, Jim. So my motion is that we go back full-time November 2nd. And I've got, I call it 6 things here that, as part of that. One is we have the, just as is in the plan, have October be for state testing, end of October be for the transition, full-time November 2nd, to come back to us at our next 2 meetings on the 13th and 27th with additional details of cost, all the details you said that you're going to be ironing out so that we can continue to understand that. And at any of those points, we can make another motion, as well as with the suggestion on substitute teacher pay. And this also approved the need for nursing assistants posting that you'd asked for, Mr. Flynn. So I don't know if that's a pretty big worded motion. So if we want to say, go back full-time November 2nd with considerations being detailed out and provided to the board for the 13th and 27th, that's what my motion would be.
So first, I'm going to ask Melissa if she got all that. Because it was a lot.
It was a lot, Madam Chair. Thank you for asking. And the answer is no, I did not get all of that. If Mr. Smith wouldn't mind reading that motion again, the condensed one that he just referred to, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion.
Okay, so here, hold
Dave,
on, David.
could I just make a suggestion? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Hold on one second. It might be the same suggestion. David, if you can start the motion with, I make a motion to accept the recommendations
Got it.
to transition to phase 3 on November 2nd, and then list, because I think what you're listing is good, so I want to make sure we do capture those. And now, Dr. Metzler, go ahead.
Well, it's kind of the same. I would say the motion should say something with a preliminary target date of November 2nd, conditional upon the following. Right, so it's kind of the same.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation to transition to phase 3 as of November 2nd, with the condition that we are updated on the 13th and 27th with any input as to any of the risks and opportunities listed in the recommendation.
And do you want to add in the piece about the LNAs and the substitute pay, or do you want us to handle that? Let me ask Melissa again. Melissa, do you want that to be like a separate motion, or can we wrap those all together?
Maybe separate?
Okay.
Okay. So maybe do that recommendation. If that passes,
Got it.
then we'll do the LNA and the,
Got it. All right. So that's
Okay.
my motion.
Second.
okay. Okay, Megan seconds. Are we all clear on the motion? Okay. I think then, Melissa, if you'll please call the roll vote.
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
No.
Okay, the motion does carry 3 to 1. Mr. Sweeney opposed, sorry.
Sorry. Okay, so we got that one done.
Yep.
Now, I think we can wrap those two together though. So David, if you want to go ahead, you can do your second motion.
Okay. Second motion would be to approve the needed postings for the nursing assistants and to direct the administration to come back, I'd say on the meeting on the 13th with more detail around the substitute teacher pay increase is my motion.
Okay, I'll second that. Any discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, Melissa, will you please call the vote?
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Thank you, motion carries.
Okay,
Caitlin, can I just follow up? Just because we have
Yeah.
quite a few, 158 people. So I think for families, what you can expect now is a selection, right? So Mr. Flynn's going to work, send something out. We're going to be asking you to think of that target date, preliminary target date of the 2nd. Going to be selecting back in person or remote, and we can change that. We want you to make that choice. We could change it as the details start to come out, but we need to get some preliminary data to start to design, right? So, for instance, I could select remote because I'm not comfortable with the details yet, and then as the details come out, I could change and then say I want to be in person. So we're gonna need to have a window where during that transition week where parents could change their mind based on what they, have listened to or been exposed to or those sorts of things. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
going to come out soon. We got to do that right away. So thank you.
I'm also assuming details about those 2 weeks around the testing will come out as well.
I would ask just for parents to pay attention to their inbox over the next couple of days. You're going to see, as Dr. Metzler mentioned, you'll see the one coming from the district itself in regards to choice. And then you'll see several communications from the building principals in regards to those testing days, meaning what students should bring, what they should be prepared with, transportation. All those details will be following over the next 2 days. So please pay attention to your inbox. And anyone who's on the call, if you have any questions of anything that comes in, please contact the building principals for clarification.
Do you guys plan to do a survey after the presentation next week? So you can capture the change to see if people have changed their mind, if they don't like the spacing exchange rates or the kids don't have the teacher they wanted or whatnot. Will you do another survey?
We could call it a verification, verifying what you selected. If you change your mind, let us know and have some data around that. That's easy enough to do, right, Mike?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Jim, the important week's probably going to be that transition week of the 26th after they've seen on the 13th and the 27th, we get into the 28th, 29th and 30th, those last 3 days in the transition week, I think that's where, if there are going to be any changes, that might be where it would take place. But I think we have to be sensitive to teacher schedules and what we design. I don't anticipate a lot of changes. I do think there'll be a few, but I don't anticipate a lot. But we'll see how this goes.
Thanks. So for next week, we will have like numbers, parents, kids that are coming, how many teachers. 5th grade has 80%. There's going to be this many kids in a classroom, distances, all that stuff. Buses, we'll have the whole shebang next week.
Those are all the details. And
Okay.
over the next 2 meetings, we'll get as much planning as we can get done between now and the 13th. My focus is really going to be trying to get that MOU in your hands as soon as possible.
Right.
Mike's focus is really going to be at the building level, getting those schedules locked down. And then we'll do some refining over the, obviously that next 2-week period while we're doing this testing and have everything really rock solid for the 27th. So I think you're going to get a lot of information on both nights, right? So it won't be an exhaustive list on the 13th. There could be more information that comes out on the 27th. I guess is what I'm saying.
The scheduling piece to me, it would be I'm thinking out loud now in regards to if I send the choice home to parents tomorrow, and we close it, or we have answers by Friday, I'm not sure all of those scheduling pieces will be done in time for Tuesday, but we can. I mean, obviously, we're going to try our best. I'm also preparing for the possibility of the amount of time that goes into scheduling. So,
Dr. Metzler, we may want to have some information, you and Mr. Flynn provided to us on a daily, weekly basis. But to Jim's point, after Tuesday, we know you're going to communicate a lot to us over the coming weeks. So we may be asking for a little bit more as it gets closer.
That's exactly correct. The board will get updates and emails as we're pulling things together, kind of like what I've been doing. So in between the meetings, you get a lot of information so that you feel like you're adequately prepared to engage in the discussions when we get to the actual meeting, which I think it's been a really good practice. I think it's really helped us along.
Yeah, I'm just curious who changed, not who personally, but the numbers that changed your mind. Because, the hybrid model, though it's horrible for scheduling, what that gave families was an indication that their kids will probably be with, only 50% or less of a class. Now we're looking at, parents who are deciding, well, all in, there could be a lot more kids in a class, a lot more kids in the whole school, a lot more kids in the playground, a lot more kids in the cafeteria. I was okay with the numbers in hybrid. Maybe they didn't like the amount of time the kids were in front of a teacher versus a screen versus a book. But I'm just wondering who might change your mind after the presentation of, what the numbers really look like next week. So, I don't know.
I'm curious as well, Jim, but I think one of the things that made me a little less curious about that was how almost identical people were willing to do hybrid or all in, right? And we talked about 80%. So that wasn't a number that, people were doing the math in their head thinking, how are you going to spread out 80%? So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think as all those details come out, if we do have a lot of change, and we want to track that because I think that'll be important data for us as we plan.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, anyone have anything else on the safe learning plan?
Just one thing, I don't think we've said it enough. Thank you to the teachers and administration. Through it all the hectic and chaos, I continue to hear, I know we've all continued to hear, the teachers are knocking it out of the park. So we appreciate it. And we know that there's going to be some stress levels coming up with everything going on. So we fully support you and we thank you more than anything. And that's on behalf of, I don't know how many parents have reached out to us to say how great the teachers are and the curriculum and that they're doing everything they can and the best they can. So we really appreciate it.
Well said. think we all echo that.
So Caitlin, I think as part of this, well, first and foremost, obviously that's leadership. You know, your HEA led by Kara Gordon does a great job communicating and supporting her people, if you will. Lisa Lambert with HAS, the same idea. So they've just been great to work with. So, you know, from our perspective too, the board's perspective, we're appreciative. Now, as far as the Safe Learning Plan, one of the platforms, and I've mentioned this to you several times, is something that we think we need to onboard staff more quickly. And it's I think Mike and Jeff have just a brief presentation that we're going to ask because it's a bidding policy that we'd like to get waived because we'd like to get this platform ASAP so that we can do our business remotely more efficiently and effectively. So I think, Mike, you want to jump in with that?
Yes. So in regards to not just more specifically currently what we have going on, but what we'd be transitioning to, we were introduced to a platform called SchoolStream. And I'm going to try and keep it low level just because it can go into the details and it might go down roads, meaning over people's heads, and it's not intended to. So the easiest way to say this is what it does is it really takes a lot of our business operations, HR, things of that nature, and makes it digital. Now, when people think digital, you may think of DocuSign or PandaDoc, but what this does is it really streamlines, you know, no coincidence of their name, our operations. One area of focus that really helped me and got me excited is the onboarding or offboarding of personnel. So it takes, typically when we hire someone, right, they'll apply on AppleTrack, they'll go through the interview process, they'll meet with Melissa Post. Melissa gives them all the paperwork that they need to fill out, then they take the opportunity to fill it out. Then Melissa has to process it, put it in. What this will do, and just this specific part of it would be, it makes that purely digital. So all their I-9s, and then what it does is it takes their I-9 information and then puts it into our other applications that we use. So it really starts to eliminate a lot of the work, but more importantly, it also keeps us on target of not anyone getting, not missing a step, but maintaining the timing in order to onboard or offboard someone. So it really helps with those pieces. Another avenue that it will help is with student registration on our end through Tech Team. I know School Mint rings a bell for some people, but with this app, I call apps because they use the term apps. What their applications do for us is it starts to marry our stuff together, PowerSchool, onboarding, offboarding, and it allows more oversight for our staff rather than having to do what haven't I done. If they're trying to put in for travel for a workshop, it takes all of those forms and makes them digital and allows us to maintain greater oversight in the process. But at the end of the day, what it really does, it minimizes paper, electronic, hard copies, and really streamlines our process for our business operations. So hiring and management, on and offboarding, Forms, it's called Forms Manager, which is an app that takes all of our paper apps and makes them digital, as well as student registration, which will help us with PowerSchool in regards to what you see every year with School Mint. So really, those are some of the things that allows us to do. But the area of focus that we envisioned more specifically was that HR side.
So this is a solution that I had been inquiring about why we didn't have something a little bit more automated when I began with the SAU a number of years ago. And I think this type of solution introduces the ability to bring in a workflow. And so, for example, with the onboarding, offboarding process that Flynn was just speaking about, it is possible to, for example, have a new employee hire and be able to introduce that employee to this portal, if you will, to be able to have the employee go in, enter all of their information, which we then can put into our system. But we can also have a number of our own staff, disparate people in our staff, be able to be part of that onboarding process to understand what training has been completed, what's left to be done. It really gives a lot of visibility into that process, not only on the administrative side, but also on the onboarding side for our I'll say operations side, but our curriculum side and our whatever plant and facilities side. So it really will offer some very unique secure workflow solutions that we just have not been able to put together up until this point. And interestingly enough, Dr. Metzler has indicated that this was a question that I was asking when I came on board myself a number of years ago. We just have not been able to find one solution that offers so much functionality. SchoolStream seems to offer that functionality.
So
Okay,
Jeff, what do we?
so,
Yeah.
yep, same question. What do you need
Yeah.
from us?
Well, looking to have policy DJ waived, which is the bidding policy. This is a solution that, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that there are ongoing expenses and there are some implementation costs. Do you have the total on your end? This was 41.
Yeah, so just more specifically, it's also the reason why, we're asking for the policy is, we've done a lot of research as we are anticipating the transition, and we've met with several other, I just call them, they're not companies, they're providers. The best part about this is this takes what we're doing and allows us to improve it. We do not have to go out and redesign what we're doing. This just helps improve our efficiency. So it's a subscription fee of $16,000 a year, but really the fee that is the onboarding. So they come and they meet with us and they map all of the systems so that they communicate and allow the efficiency to occur. And that is an onboarding. Jeff, did you say I have that? I just had it.
Number?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no 41,000.
It was less than 30, right? So not to exceed 30 would work, right?
Not to, okay.
Yeah.
28,600, I believe, altogether for the applications that we're looking for. There are other applications that we may roll out in the future or seek to roll out in the future, but I think that 28 should be fine. And under 30 would be fine for now.
I'm sorry, is implementation or onboarding 28,000, or does the 28,000 include the subscription fee for the first year?
28,000 is the total application for the deployment. And then there's the subscription fee of the 16.
Okay. So I know you just said not to exceed 30, but really, don't we need more than that? I mean, wouldn't we really need like not to exceed like 45?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had it wrong. That was my bad.
Moving forward,
Okay,
after
question.
they implement, after they build your systems, right? That's what they're doing. That's what that initial cost is. Once they build their systems,
Right.
moving forward, you just have the subscription fee like we have with all of our other things. This also will eliminate some of our other processes that we have in place on my side, and you'll hear about that through the budget process in a couple minutes. So that's really where you'll see that.
Okay.
Couple questions.
Yep.
Mr. Flynn, so the deployment 28K, what's the time frame on that again?
So once we get the go ahead, we're actually going to be bringing them in as soon as possible because we're kind of in a unique situation in where we're kind of developing some of the processes starting for July 1st.
Right.
So we're going to be working with them over the next couple of months to make sure that we're designing what's best for Hampstead. So it's just a little bit unique, right? So typically they would just come in and say, all right, what are you doing? We'll do this, we'll fix it. And now those meetings are going to be, all right, what do you do now? But what do you want to do come July 1? So it's kind of like a twofold type of design with them.
Okay. What's the timeline on deployment? Did they say that it's going to take a few months? What's that look like?
So it's going to be really driven by us. The HR piece, that's going to be our first priority, having that in place because of onboarding and offboarding. Then you work through the next couple apps in regards to, so student registration, I don't really need to be active until August of 2021, right? So those apps get prioritized, and then that's how they transition them appropriately between now and whenever the completed app process is.
Yep. So I guess that's where I was going with it, exactly that. The licenses, when you're going to be deploying. So that 16K, is that upfront 16K licenses, or is that anticipated from when you first start until you're ready for all the modules, and then that's when the 16K is? What's the deployment of that?
So this is because of where we're falling. Unfortunately, it's not going to be in standard alignment with a school budget. So that 16 will get us from now until October of next year. But what they'll end up doing is they'll realigning it so that, because most of our subscriptions go from July 1 to June 29th, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So this gets us basically in an agreement. The onboarding fees get us through all of those onboarding processes. And then what will happen is the annual subscription will be due, but what we do is we end up working with these companies to align it for a July 1 to June 29th.
And Dave, to your point though, I think that your question is, are we going to be paying for this before we can use it? No, I'm not going to allow that. This will not be allowed to be paid for before it's in a situation that we can use or implement it. I don't know if that was what you were inquiring about.
I was more like wondering, is it 16K up front? Is it like, I know licensing structures, I do them for work, so I know how they can get you in front, or you can negotiate it to the back end. It's kind of like that carrot that says once we're fully deployed, then we buy the licenses. So I was hoping that we're going to get a little bit into that leads with them to negotiate that.
Oh, yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And then the last question is more of, I believe you were going to be looking for us to not go into, going to look at multiple bidding. But if we talk to multiple districts to see what they're using, just so we can figure out, is this a good deal? Is this the best software? Or is this the best software for a district our size, et cetera?
So they are used all over the country.
Okay.
And when we talked about what we've been doing, I'd say it's part of our job is what we've been trying to anticipate what's coming. So we've been shopping around, we currently use Infinite Visions with our district. Is that what's best for us moving forward? So through our shopping around, as I said, this product really allows us to take what we've done or what we're doing rather than having to go and redesign. So the short answer is yes, we have, and my recommendation is this is the one that's going to help us, as
Okay.
Jeff mentioned.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Mike, you can tell them we beat them up a little bit.
I didn't know if you wanted to take the credit or not. So
No, I was just, yeah, they're just geographically, it's a place where they don't have a real foothold here, and so they gave us a real good introductory kind of like welcome to New England kind of thing. They're out of Illinois, more Midwest, so they're great company, good people, and it was one of those things where I was like, geez, if we can get this implemented, ASAP, we won't struggle in July, and especially if we're onboarding staff now, even if it's just substitutes and temporary staff, we'll be able to run enough people through, and I think we'll be in great shape when it comes to the spring hiring into the summer with this program, this platform, in terms of efficiency and effectiveness. I mean, you alluded earlier that people get so frustrated waiting so long during the onboarding process. So this was, we were excited. This is you're looking for solution providers, and this is definitely a solution. So.
I think the last thing, sorry, I just, when we eventually talk more about our planning for the new SAU, it'd be good to have, understanding at the end of the day, what are the new softwares, what are all the costs that's taken us to go to the new SAU. I know that you gave us a number back a year ago. We refreshed over the summer, but now that we'll get into actuals, I think it would be good to see that so we can tally all this information up at the end of the day.
Perfect. Jeff, do you have your motion? Jeff usually has a sheet on this, like a.
No, simply to waive bid policy DJE with respect to the purchase of SchoolStream in an amount not to exceed $45,000. I would suggest. If anyone would like to.
Anyone?
I'll make the motion to waive policy DJE in the amount not to exceed $45K for deployment and licenses for for the school year of 2020-2021.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Megan seconds. Any more discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none. Melissa, will you please call the vote?
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another thing, and Jeff has a screenshot of this for you. We talked a little bit about the paving. So the town was courteous enough to extend an opportunity for the school district to work off the town's existing repaving of School Street up into the HMS lower parking area and driveway. The lower parking area and driveway have been broken up and are becoming dangerous. The town extended their pricing and the project is complete. So special thanks to our road agent, John Worthen, and our facilities director, Jeff Mackey, for working collaboratively to get this project done. So Jeff, I think you have a screenshot of these two pictures. Can
I
Jeff
do.
share
I
it?
think as soon as I can share it out, I will. It really came out phenomenally well, and I will. And I've shared with the board previously that I was getting very, very concerned from a staff safety perspective that a lot of our staff park on the lower level parking area, and that was in fact getting quite dicey. And so this, let's see if I can share that out for you. You can see that this is the parking area right here, which had been shared out, which had been repaved all the way down School Street. It was really a very, very well done job. I'm certainly hoping that that's going to be able to hold the pavement below it in place. But anyone who drives up to the middle school certainly to notice a significant difference. And I am very, very pleased that from a staff and safety perspective, this has been taken care of. So I wanted to share that with the board. I'm really, really impressed with the results. So thank you to everyone involved.
That looks great. That's significantly better. Probably will make the rest of it look worse, but it's part of it done. So I appreciate the work that everybody did kind of bring that to fruition. And thank you to the town for extending your pricing for us there.
And Caitlin, I had one quick non-public student request.
We're not done. Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Hold on. Yeah. We
Oh,
have
that's
one other thing that I kind of got off track. So the other agenda item that I did, that we have on there is the responsibilities list that we had been working on. So to give a quick background to mostly the people who are watching. So as most people know, we have a little bit different setup this year where we are utilizing Dr. Metzler as an executive consultant. And it became clear we needed to determine responsibilities between Dr. Metzler and Dr. Cochran, who's the interim superintendent at SAU 55. Not because there has been any conflict or anything like that. This is purely to make sure that everybody knows what the expectations are and what the responsibilities are. So I am going to read out, I apologize because I don't have the right thing open. Hold on one second. Sorry. So board members, you have, I sent earlier today the final version of this plan, the resolution that I'm going to ask for a motion on in order to get this in place. Just as a reminder and info, we worked with our district council on this to make sure that we were putting things in place that made sense. So this is, as you'll hear in here, this is for the remainder of this school year. So we're talking about the time frame between now and June 30th, how this is going to be structured as far as responsibilities. The state actually set by RSA responsibilities for superintendent services, but a school district can choose to kind of implement those services as how they wish. So I'm going to go ahead and read the plan and then I will read the motion that I'm asking for. So SAU 55 currently provides superintendent services to both the Timberlane Regional School District and Hampstead. These superintendent services are itemized in RSA 194-C:4. There are a number of ongoing and additional superintendent services that Hampstead requires in preparation for becoming a single district school administrative unit. The board has determined that some of the superintendent services itemized in RSA 194-C:4 are best provided by and through SAU 55's current personnel and systems up until June 30th, 2021. This includes the following services: payroll, cash flow, bills, records, files, accounts, etc. Second, labor contract negotiation support and the processing of grievances, arrangement for mediation, fact-finding or arbitration, and the management of all employee benefits and procedural requirements. Number 3, writing, receiving, disbursement, and the meeting of all federal, state, and local compliance requirements. Number 4, oversight of the provisions of insurance, appropriate hearings, litigation, and court issues. And 5, pupil transportation. The board has determined that it is in the best interest of Hampstead's transition and transition planning that the following services itemized in RSA 194-C:4 are best provided by Hampstead's executive consultant, Dr. Earl Metzler, through June 30th, 2021. The goal of this determination is to ensure that systems, people, and policies are in place that will allow the district to function effectively and efficiently as a single district school administrative unit on July 1st, 2021. They include the following services: 1, recruitment, supervision, and evaluation of district staff. 2, development, review, and evaluation of curriculum, coordination of the implementation of various curricula, provisions of staff training and professional development, and development and recommendation of policies and practices necessary for compliance relating to curriculum and instruction. 3, compliance with laws, regulation, and rules regarding special education, Americans with Disabilities Act, home education, minimum standards, student records, sexual harassment, and other matters as may from time to time occur. 4, pupil achievement assessment through grading and state and national assessment procedures and the methods of assessment to be used. 5, the ongoing assessment of district needs related to student population, program facilities, and regulations. 6, school board operations and the relationship between the board and the district administration. 7, the daily administration and provision of educational services to students at the school facility, including but not limited to fiscal affairs, staff, student and parent safety and building issues, and dealing with citizens at large. 8, assignment, usage, and maintenance of administrative and school facilities. 9, designation of number, grade, or age levels, and as applicable, other information about students to be served. 10, pupil governance and discipline, including age-appropriate due process procedures. 11, administrative staffing. 12, school calendar arrangements and the number and duration of days pupils are to be served pursuant to RSA 189:1. 13, identification of consultants to be used for various services. The board has determined that it is in the best interest of Hampstead's transition and transition planning that the following services itemized in RSA 194-C:4 are best provided by Hampstead's executive consultant, Dr. Earl Metzler, and the interim superintendent, Dr. Brian Cochran, working collaboratively. This includes the following services: annual budget inclusive of all sources of funding. This plan will be promptly communicated by the board to the district's executive consultant and the interim superintendent of SAU 55. The plan shall become effective on October 7th, 2020, and shall be in support of such other duties as the board may assign to its executive consultant pursuant to his contract. Obviously, that was a lot of lawyer language, so thank you for bearing with me as I read through all of the RSA listings. So board members, we have, you've seen the draft, you've seen this final version, I sent it earlier. So what we need to do at this point is I need to ask for a motion that, again, of course, is worded specifically. So what I would be asking for this resolution and motion of the board would be the following. I move that the board approve the following resolution and motion of the board. Whereas the Hampstead School District shall be responsible for all superintendent services as a single school district on July 1, 2021. And whereas the Hampstead School District requires a transitional plan, which includes designing, testing, and implementing new superintendent service delivery models to ensure that the district is able to effectively and efficiently operate as a single district on July 1, 2021. And whereas the district needs personnel, policies, and systems in place and operational by July 1, 2021 to provide superintendent services. And whereas state law permits a school district to contract for certain superintendent services, to designate those services that it desires to receive from a school administrative unit, and to maintain certain services within the district. Be it resolved that the district hereby adopts the attached transition plan for superintendent services in aid of its transition to a single district school administrative unit with an effective date of October 7th, 2020. Melissa, I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the motion that I am looking for in order to put in place what we've discussed about responsibilities. Do I have anyone making the motion?
Second. Oh,
No,
I'm
you
sorry.
need to first.
No, I didn't mean to say that. So
That's
moved.
Okay.
That's what I meant to
Do
say.
we have a second? Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Megan? Do we have any discussions or questions? Okay. Seeing none, Melissa, will you please call the vote?
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So as clarification, that is to reiterate, that is to clarify responsibilities between our executive consultant and the SAU 55 interim superintendent, although it's more the services involved, not specific people. So, okay, that is that. Do we have anything under other business that any members wanted to discuss?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
Could we get a status on the Chromebooks?
Mike?
Yes,
could
yes, you can. So we just heard from them yesterday. What was yesterday? Monday, right? No, Tuesday. So now their anticipated delivery date to the supplier is the 19th. The week of the 19th. I'm reading the email right now. So the week of the 19th. So once they get there, they then get shipped from our supplier to us. I have a standing meeting with our person on Mondays and Fridays. So I think I got that information on the 5th. Yeah, yesterday, Monday. So if anything changes, I will communicate that appropriately.
So the supplier just
Okay.
turns around and ships them. They don't have to configure anything for us, right?
No, once they're in, he turns them around.
So what's the turnaround from when you get them till they're in the kids' hands?
That goal would be, example, if they came in on Friday, we would work through the weekend to get them out on Monday. If they came in on a Thursday, we'd work through the evening to try and get them out on Friday. Everyone in my department, we're all hands on deck, ready to put those in the students' hands.
And we appreciate that. Thank you for the update.
Okay. Anything else? I know we have to go to budget after this to workshop, but I know, Dr. Metzler, you have one item we need to do. You need to bring forward in a non-public. So I guess we'll we'll hold the motion to go into non-public. We'll do that as quickly as possible. I think it should be short. Mike, are we using the same link and everything for the budget workshop?
So really, that was my question. It's up to you guys. I can't, if we're going to break into, I'll call them, I'm going to use the word breakout rooms, but last year when we did budget sessions and we broke into our small groups, I can't do breakout sessions from here.
Okay.
If that was the anticipation.
I'm not sure that breakout sessions are going to be possible. My thought was that we just have a very brief, very brief department level summary and offer some direction to the board as to where the district budgets are going. But I don't think that the groups are going to be, it'll be possible to break out into subgroups. So we're probably going to have to do it on one Zoom like this, right? So if you wanted to use the same link, that'd be fine, right?
I mean, that's what we did last year for the first meeting is we all met as groups, as one group. We didn't break into the subgroups last year. That's just the way we did it for whatever reason.
So that would be fine to do very high level.
Okay. Board members, are you good with that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. That being said, I don't have my paper with, hold on, I need my paper that has all my non-public number things. So I believe we'd be looking, I guess it's just I'm sorry, I shouldn't have had this ready and I don't.
That's one demerit for you.
I know, just keep adding them up. All right.
I am.
Yeah, I know, keeping track. At what point do I get kicked out? Because, like, I want to know where my number is, Jim. All right.
2 demerits.
Okay. Okay, so I'd be looking for a motion to enter into non-public under 91A:3, paragraph 2, C. Reputation.
So am I sending out a link for you guys to do this, or are you doing the phone bridge?
Oh, you can't put us in a breakout room.
Correct. I would just have to send you a new link here real quick.
Let's just do that.
Okay.
Let's do
Do
that.
that now. Okay.
Links
Because I haven't checked. What?
is the link coming to our email, Mike?
Yes.
Okay.
So board members, Mike, Earl, and Melissa, right?
Correct. Do we need to leave this meeting to join the other one?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll have to come back to this one
Right.
for the budget stuff. Can you have 2 meetings up, Mike?
That is what I think I'm going to have to make who wants to be host.
Make me host, Mike.
Oh,
I still don't know
this
if you're able to do it.
Okay.
All right, while you're doing that, did someone make the motion? I'm sorry.
Motion.
Okay, David made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Jim seconds. Melissa, will you please call the roll vote?
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
and Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. 8:20.
Okay, so we will hop out of here. Mike, you're going to send us a link. And then we'll come back here. Okay,
I'll be here.
I think I got it. All right. Thank you. See you in a bit.